Greetings, 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 greetings. Okay, YouTube, we are on, and welcome to UCU African Heritage Study Group. Continuing the reading of the Moorhead CRUCIAN Dialogues. And you can purchase your book on Amazon or on the island of St. Croix, by contacting 340-277-7485. Again, 340-277-7485. And we read, we have our study group every Wednesday except the first Wednesday of the month. So next week, Wednesday, we won't have any African Heritage Study Group reading because the St. Croix Council of Elders Intergenerational Dialogue will be on for that Wednesday. So if you haven't gotten our newspaper, so you could be in tune to what's going on, please go to www.ucu.webs.com and download your free copy and go to the community announcement page so that you'll know what is going on. I'm Shalima Edwards, and I think you have to slide it over this way. Because it was raining. Yes. So if anything, speak a little louder for everyone to hear. Introduce yourself.
My name is Ras Soldier.
Ras Malachi.
Okay. So what page?
So we'll be reading from 210.
All right. So page 210. First character, we'll just take the character.
All right. I don't do too good on the feminine, but I have to bring out the feminine. So I'll be reading as she, and and my brethren will be reading as me. So we'll start. Yes, and a big one, because as I see it, this new generation of leaders would have been the veterans returning to a changed situation, but obviously they didn't embrace it. They certainly accepted it. As I am seeing it, the situation was one of Crucians and Puerto Ricans collapsed. Once the 54 Act went, Puerto Ricans were on the same level as Crucians. They suddenly needed each other's vote and political support, but foreign workers had no political power to offer a politician. They would have been neglected by the very people who could help them most. The consciousness of the Crucian movers and shakers would therefore have been decidedly against Black people. Is that what you are waiting to hear me say?
Not exactly. I just wanted to be sure you picked up on the Black against Black undercurrent that was created by the new structure imposed by the system and accepted and perpetuated by us.
I'm seeing your point, and it makes me wonder. I certainly can see the politicians turning their back on them, but wouldn't the union have been pleased to have their Caribbean brothers back to add to their numbers?
Wouldn't that have been nice? Nothing Talgo saw.
What do you mean? What happened this time?
Maybe Washington saw it in the best interest of the nation. Immigration policies were devastating to the unincorporated territory of the Virgin Islands in general, and our island in particular. Look at us, overwhelmingly African descendants, but sharply polarized by place of birth. What started as hundreds of bonded workers from the Eastern Caribbean back during World War II would by 1980 account for about half of our population.
And all that time, they would be classified as aliens and garrets?
That's the root right there. From the 40s to the 80s, these foreign workers had as many civil rights as our contracted laborers before them. They couldn't bring their spouses or children. They couldn't get employed with the government. And of course, they couldn't vote. But they fought back most effectively in the courts. They won the right to have their spouses and children join them. But then their children were banned from our schools until they were able to win the right to have their children attend the public schools. And as I'm sure you can imagine, official discrimination only bred more prejudice among the masses of Crucians. So, to answer your question directly, immigration policies didn't allow for these foreign workers, unlike before, the Americans to join the Union, even more so than Puerto Ricans had been segregated. These new workers were housed in squalid, squalid camps, their abject condition playing right into the Crucians' need for an escape from their own misery. With the universal suffrage of the 54 Act, Puerto Ricans had established themselves on equal footing with Crucians. Who knows if not for the presence of the new deprived workers, the conflict with Puerto Ricans might have raged on for who knows how long. But these new arrivals from the Eastern Caribbean were sufficiently powerless to be perfect stress release for Crucian anger. After all, they didn't look exactly like us, the very people we blame for our predicament.
I don't see how insane policies like those could ever be in the interest of the nation. Pitting black people against each other could only be in the interest of white supremacy.
You say that as if you were convinced America would not see white supremacy in its interests.
It just upset me to realize how easily the system was able to erode the progress made by David Hamilton Jackson. Correct me if I'm wrong, but wasn't he responsible for a Crucian solidarity we've not been able to duplicate? That Crucian unity of purpose that was on display in 1920 before the arrival of Rev Barrow, in my humble opinion, was the apex of our climb so far. This Americanism just made things worse.
I think just about every conscious African descendant will find themselves agreeing with you. And maybe it was Mr. Jackson's success that brought about many reactions. As I think I've said to you, he might not have understood the concept of mental emancipation, but he clearly identified with black people. Are you familiar with the cradle to the grave philosophy of the labor union?
No, I think I understand the concept, but I'm not really familiar with it.
My bad. I should have long ago told you about the union estates.
That's right. The union was supposed to have purchased whole estates on thousands of acres of land. What did they do with all that land?
Another brilliant move by your liberator. His critics charge that he let the Danes and the royal family make a fool of him because of the price he was willing to pay for land. But as Mr. Jackson said, Crucian land was worth more than their high prices. And no sooner than the hard times of Depression years, his judgment would be vindicated. Not to mention the vaunted homestead program that purchased lands from the Union, giving it much needed liquidity in hard times. Without the land purchases Mr. Jackson made, I think I can fairly say the St. Croix Labor Union would not have survived.
So, what did Cradle to the Grave mean?
Pretty much what you think it did. On every estate the union owned, members could expect the protection of the organization throughout every phase of their lives, from midwifery to burial services. Mr. Jackson had the union assisting its members as thought as though the government should.
The way I see it, David Hamilton Jackson wasn't just concerned with protecting and assisting. His thing was literally improving the quality of life.
You're so right with that. Even today, Mr. Jackson would still stand head and shoulders above any politician you could name. Let me offer an instance of his leadership. I think you'll appreciate. As I know you recall, Mary Thomas and Joe Paris didn't live together. This is this is an issue I don't know any other Crucian leader to touch. As much as our history has impacted on it, yet on every Union estate, families were provided with separate quarters that allowed mother, father, and children to live together. It proved to be another policy that brought criticism. Mr. Jackson, Mr. Jackson Way, but he kept the Union estate managers to his philosophy, even if it required the construction of separate structures.
Earlier, it seemed like you were trying to put some distance between me and David Hamilton Jackson. But now, I just love how you're endearing him to me. Why didn't you tell me about this matter of living quarters earlier? Of course, you had no way of knowing, but it has always been a point of contention with me when it comes to the American approach to cohabitation in housing projects. And now, this Section 8 housing. I just don't understand this insane policy of women having to hide their relationships with men in order to keep government subsidized housing. It's crazy. What rational mind would expect healthy families to develop in such an environment? To hear that my liberator thought like me is so rewarding. The man might not have had the vocabulary of a conscious African descendant, but the more I learn about him, the clearer I see his action as those of a conscious black man. Like you said, not even our contemporary good for nothing misleaders will utter a word in defense of the black family and what slavery did to it, and now Americanism.
My point was really to demonstrate that the black against black undercurrent that developed after the war could not have taken root on any Union estate. What started an estate, what started at Estate Hope was the beginning of a movement that continued as long as the Union operated the estates. As we know, Estate Hope and Blessing were not Union property. They were purchased by Mr. Caspar Holstein and operated as a dairy and headquarters by the Union. With the acquisition of Estate Grove Place, the Union established its headquarters at that central location while continuing to operate the dairy. In those early years from 1915 to 1920, the movement nurtured by Mr. Jackson was empowering Crucian to an independent posture not known before or since.
But aren't those the very reasons why the Union and David Hamilton Jackson became such an urgent target for destruction? As I see it, Rev Barrow might just have been the final component for our people to become conscious African descendants. Neither the competitors nor the antagonists were willing to risk what might have resulted. Doesn't history indicate how forces coalesced against any further progress? When you mentioned the foreign workers after the war, I was hoping for a jump start to the movement that was petering out. Then, when you gave me the particulars, it became evident that whatever national interest they might attribute their immigration policies to, I personally don't buy it. To me, it was primarily designed to destroy what David Hamilton Jackson started.
Well, as we approach the 1960s, the decade you were so positively pumped up about the impact it had on our consciousness, let me point out something else you miss about your liberator. Say what they might about the man. His vision rested on developing his people. Who could question his commitment to the African descendants on the island? Now compare that to the consciousness of the leaders we'll produce from here on.
I'm not sure I understand what you're telling me. Didn't you already determine that he didn't have black consciousness as we know it?
You don't have to be black conscious, even as we define it today, to embrace your own. And as simple as that may seem, it's a difficult thing to find a politician to fit the description today. We've even given up on educating our children. They wouldn't admit it, but our school system wouldn't be satisfied and consider itself successful. If they could just pacify our children to get jobs, any job, as long as they could stay out of trouble.
I couldn't disagree with that characterization, but I still don't get your point.
My point is that the post war generations of leaders were convinced that our people weren't capable of development, where Mr. Jackson's vision was for the development of our people. Those later misleaders concluded that it would be a waste of time. Every comfort, therefore, had to be made to attract white people to provide for us.
Now I see where you're going. That undercurrent of black against black you pointed out would only have fertilized an undergrowth of black inferiority.
I just have to note how clinical you can be with your explanations.
Don't pontificate. Either I'm on point or not. Don't you tell me the US Immigration Service introduced foreign workers of African descendants from the Eastern Caribbean as a bonded, unsponsored underclass of menial laborers who were powerless?
Yes, I did.
Well, isn't that the premise on which the rest of it is predicated? If there are no coincidences, doesn't it follow that black inferiority would invariably grow out of such a racial clash? And I didn't didn't you say our leaders had given up on educating black children because it's a waste of time? And didn't you point out how I needed to take note that this was when David Hamilton Jackson's inside out cultivation died on the vine? Then you said the new leaders saw our only hope as having to grow from the outside in, which makes me wonder whether you think me either hard-headed or thin-skinned. It's been at least an hour since I told you I'm convinced and agree with your analysis. So it is because I came here thinking the 60s was a watershed for our consciousness that you're now being tactful as we approach it. Well, let me disabuse you of any such notion. I have been sitting here for as long and attentively as I have because I'm learning things about myself and my life I simply was never aware of. I don't know, simply was never aware of. Don't know make me have to plead with you to continue as straightforward and to the point as you started out. I need to know these things.
Maybe I misspoke. I never had any intention other than sharing my outlook.
Well, maybe just for a split second there, you had me thinking you didn't want to tell the whole story of this black on black animosity that's tearing us apart. Even I could have, on my own, concluded that the biggest problem our remains, facing us remains a matter of where black people were born. Immigrants from the Caribbean are of such significance in numbers that as naturalized citizens, they are the most sought after voting bloc in the territory. But until today, I was under the impression that Caribbean immigrants were a recent phenomenon brought on by the construction of the refineries. I had no idea we had those Barbadians and others from way back then. And it is most interesting the major different immigration policies can make. Looking at us now, who would have thought this to be a change of policy due to the war? And that after more than a generation, the Americans would lift the ban, but not before making those immigrants as dispersed as the untouchables of India in our midst. Then, after the racial vitriol of a couple of generations, citizens and naturalized citizens find themselves on equal footing. What a social recipe. And to think, no one made a comparison with the Puerto Rican immigration to expose the unbearable contrast. So don't you be shortchanging me. Explain how this genocidal posture took root among us, because you seem to be saying the gestation period was between the end of the war and the 60s.
Yes, that's the critical period. But allow me a little bit of personal adjustment. As you spoke, you made me realize we're approaching my actual experience as an adult. And you have shown yourself to be more perceptive than I gave you credit. As I thought about it, I realized I was trying to do things like an out of body experience, thinking that I was objective by not being personal. But you caught it right up. You ain't easy at all.
Just tell me how we managed to treat our brothers and sisters as wretched aliens.
It didn't happen. It didn't happen overnight. It took a long time for the circumstances of bringing to take root in the Crucian consciousness. After being barred from the American Virgin Islands in 1917, the return of foreign workers during World War II was reminiscent of the importance of the importation of the so-called coolies from India, disembarking from schooners in the harbor. They would be loaded with sugarcane bagoon carts, and cattle trucks to be transported to the fated Soviet camps in the country. At first, it was strictly cane cutters who came from the harvest and then left. Yet the way they were treated subjugated them socially as undesirables. And the Crucian consciousness turning to the mighty colossus of America. Compassion and empathy for other black people was simply not on our agenda.
And this would be the war years, right? What was the impact of the returning veterans?
No question about it. The veterans changed the landscape of the island in every conceivable way. It was literally a generation of men returning home that stretched well into the 50s. The Korean War followed World War II so closely that a generation of a young men up with the ambition of signing up for military service. And I can tell you they were in the polar opposite of the Caribbean migrants. Stiff, stretched, and iron in uniform tailored to their style, with caps ranked a perfect angle. They strutted about our tongues with a swagger that mesmerized isolated landlocked Crucians. They talked differently, walked differently, danced differently, and even introduced their own style of cars and driving cars. They called mambo driving. This island underwent a complete metamorphosis, metamorphosis as a result of bringing veterans brought home and used to power themselves into leadership positions. By the time the 60s arrived, it could be confidently stated that Crucian consensus was no longer Caribbean in its outlook. You arrived, we had arrived, we were Americans.
See there? Now that's the kind of interesting stuff I want to hear. Break it down for me, though. How was that difference apparent?
In every which way, I'm not exa- ex-
Exactly.
exaggerating. Any research will confirm that I'm telling you. I lived it. From fashion to music to sports to food, everything went through a remarkable change. I remember we didn't have media. Puerto Ricans Boleros and Mambos captivated us on the radio. But nighttime radio was American. There were a few powerful radio stations in the States that beamed an infectious rhythm of blues music that quickly found a home in our consciousness. 45 RPM records of the latest stateside black music were at a premium, and the fashion followed in the wake of images and our celebrity appeared to be radicals like Ebony and Jet magazines.
But you said food too. Don't tell me we stopped eating fish and fungi.
No, not our beloved fish and fungi, but as we took to eat hamburgers and cheeseburgers and tuna fish sandwiches, we noticeably stopped eating what was Crucian in origin. Ground food became what the migrants ate. Green bananas, yam, tanya, and even sweet potato disappeared from our plates. Fried plantains were all we could tolerate from what we knew as ground food. Rice and beans, our staple, not ground food. But by the 1960s, we exchanged our Crucian diet to some kind of modified American diet. Our very taste changed so dramatically. I still find it amazing when I come across fruit trees laden with fruits and I couldn't get enough of as a youngster. I'm sure you've seen it, just rotting on the ground.
Yes, unfortunately, I've seen it and even thought about it when I'm at the supermarket going through imported half ripe or rotten fruits. I always wondered why we did stuff like that. Never would I have connected it to our black inferiority and the roots of black on black warfare. But now I can see the confluence of Caribbean blacks and American domination creating a deadly mix. Hurting as the Crucian consciousness had to have been from the Depression. There really wasn't a choice between the Caribbean and American ways. Of course, we would turn our backs on migrants to embrace the fascinating ways our fathers and brothers brought home. How were we to realize we were taking on a whole new consciousness?
You get a picture. It was as if transfer had taken place during the war, because it really wasn't until 1950 that we adopted American ways, mannerism, and actually wanted to be American. Unfortunately, as we've seen it, it was the detriment of what Crucian identify identity we still had. And just under the radar, the change of immigrants workers was taking place. It was no longer just seasonal cane cutters regulated to squatter camps in the country. There was a steady increase in bandits, sponsored workers doing every menial labor task that they could get, from domestic mines to yard workers and pack room staffers. Yet they apply themselves to every opportunity with discipline and diligence their families back home desperately depended on.
You know, as I sort this in my head, I find we've been lucky not to have had more serious flare ups than we've had. I mean, look at the ingredients. These are components of an explosive social situation.
The number don't really get to those explosive proportions until the 1960s. When the refineries showed the 50s, there was this insidious expansion of black underclass. Work, work,
And the class guy.
work harder than anyone else for pay. They work harder than anyone else for less pay. But they remain a minority and tough it out because it was income they couldn't earn on the island they left behind. The black immigrants of the 1950s were the most discriminated of all. They were too often left to make shelters out of abandoned yards and ruins. And the newly Americanized Crucian simply used and abused black immigrants with impunity.
All right, so we stop at the top of page 216 and we'll continue next time. I wonder if we should do a what do you call it? Marathon one of these nights because we got a lot of we got a good bit of reading left to do. I mean, I'm game if anybody's game. One of these nights we could like read probably do what 2 hours.
With no discussion.
Huh?
With no discussion.
No, with discussion.
Marathon. All right.
All right. So thoughts. What do y'all thought about the reading? What you read? Okay, for half an hour.
Me also, I mean, see, not much of a changes. Everything I read is a Michigan secret after that.
Yeah.
Hmm.
We still see the same classes system we have in place. We still idolize American way of life. The family, black family is still at a point that we don't feel African, we feel school, and we still bamboozle our identity. So I don't see much of a change,
Yeah.
Maybe that I read that.
It's interesting to recognize that the way we don't get caught up in these ideas of, you know, of better than, and not recognizing that not too long before that, the same position that we were, you know, attributing to, and you know, what's the word I'm looking for? We were placing our brothers and sisters from the other islands, you know, what we were putting them through. We were going through ourselves. And the fact that none of that was in the consciousness. Because you're talking just slightly around the time, during the time of David Hamilton Jackson. We were in the situation. You know what I'm saying? And the war just come and the war changed the whole dynamic. You know what I mean? Just one war, a bunch of men went, left the island, and come back like with a different sense of who they be.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? And now I would say they gain some level of bourgeoisie vibes, you know what I mean? And maybe those who also went off to school at the time to get educated come back feeling like they were better than. But forget where they come from and now start to treat their own brothers and sisters from the different islands the same way they were treated not more than 20-25 years prior. That's the thing. And you know what's so funny? Amidst the climate we in today, you're actually beginning to see that again. You know what I'm saying? You actually beginning to see that with certain things that are coming up people more today.
But I would like to add to the war situation, the military, because yeah, when they came back, it was okay. You're nothing unless you join the military. It was a statue of like we're better than you, type of mentality. And even now, the recruiting is like be what? No, I remember this commercial. Be all you can be
Find your future
in the army. Y'all remember that commercial? Be
Yeah.
all you could be, or something like that. So it's like it causes people to like disregard your consciousness to some degree of like yeah, I'm a Crucian, or I'm supporting the locals in that way. And once you change it that way, it's like okay, I'm American, and everything is America, and you just like disregard even the history of the consciousness of the people here. When you ask for some people, when you communicate with some military folks, it's like they don't even know about David Hamilton Jackson. They don't even know about the rebellions that took place, the injustice, and the freedom fighters that stood up. They just lose that and just like embrace the American way. You know, so I do have witnessed some of that.
Well, I think first I want to thank Mario for helping me to get a better understanding of the past. Because I always know that there was this prejudice against islanders, but I never really knew how it started. You know, so I want to give Mary a lot of respect for helping me to better understand that process. Because, like you said, that whole Americanism didn't start till the 1950s. So if you think about it, is 1917 America bought here, right? That's approximately 40 years. It took a generation. That's like 40 years is approximately one generation. We talk about a generation for them to transfer, and westernize. Because when you join the military, you don't go through a mental purge. You know. That basic training is to beat out that kind of thing out of you, beat out your culture, beat out, you know what I'm saying? They're like, yes sir, no sir. And like one have a tune, he said, um, um, left, right, left, right, left, right, left, right, march, right? You know that the thing? He said, well, when we leave right, we went wrong. You check? When we left right, we went wrong, you know what I'm saying? So, man, whole understanding and say, like, while a lot of people or parents will send their youths to the military as a way to pay for college, which is still happening. A lot of people didn't really understand what was happening to them in terms of going through that process. You understand? And the other thing is, I think the federal government recognized the power of the US dollar at that time too. You check? That's what these guys came back with as a little chavo. You check? So that economic power you come back with, get you feeling the machismo vibes. Like, you know, you're on top of things because you got a little paper in your pocket. And it make you discriminate against your own people. So they recognize the power of the US dollar and just, I guess, wanted to keep that within their territories. Whether that was whether they took into consideration the ramifications of that of other European colonies, because all those other islands are run by Europeans too. You understand? All these other islands is all under European influence. So the power of the dollar, I think they recognize that, and by influencing and educating that generation, like you said, they just westernize. They start eat. So it's like today still, much people can't say they gonna eat provision and just satisfy off a guava and plum. Like you tell people like that's all you eat for a day. I just had guava and plum today. Like, well, like you matter what? You know what I'm saying?
Even you watch the dynamics now, it made it seem like the American way was the way. When you watch what take place on the island of St. Croix, you can't speak. Even in St. Thomas, the so-called migrants in them time was forced to work harder than the local Virgin Islands, you know what I mean, the natives and the Americans. But today now, that adversity they face at the time end up being a blessing today. Because a lot of people them down island, you call them, they are business owners. They have more business owners than the native person. They have more home owners. They own their own homes. You know, they're more self-sustainable. When you see the Saturday market, you find people who in CRUCIAN, to say, who selling produce and who planting the vineyards. So even though at the time it seemed like the downtrodden, like they was the worst and they the less, today they have to be the one. They're like the backbone of the society today. You know, if you take them out of the society today, the native man or woman around here, they last. They you know, they're submissive to everything. They ain't got no strength in them. Like they ain't got no strength because they don't know what to turn. All they know is this way of life to depend upon the system now. You know what I mean? The American way of life, but the person from the down, they were like, no, they're independent as independent can be. So the adversity they faced was end up being something like a blessing in disguise in a sense. Because you know what I mean? They strand they know they have to stay within them their own realms and even the Santa Domingo. They stay within themselves and right now you go in the town of Christians there. When you pass the police station, that stretch there, they don't capitalize in, you know what I mean? The construct, you know what I mean? They don't set their foot in. The Dog Island, we call them, they don't set the CRUCIANs They're still trying to
They
find
work
a
for
way.
government.
Yeah,
Well, the Crucians them get conditioned, and they didn't. He said in the book, they didn't even realize that they were getting reprogrammed. They don't see it as an easier, better life. It's just like a cat or a dog, right? Let's say cat, for example. A cat could go and catch lizard and hunt and survive. I've seen a mother cat, a wild, what they call stray cat, raise a whole fleet of kitten in the bush just catching lizard.
Mm.
And you domesticate that cat by providing food. You take away that natural instinct to survive. That cat become dependent. Meow! Like, feed me, brother. Like, party food there, man. You don't stop right now. You understand? So the reality is this sense of entitlement that people today have, depending on the system, and it's something that happening in America that the Democrats push. The sense of entitlement. You're supposed to have housing, and even going back to a little more in terms of the housing. Hey, the families, okay, the state provide you housing, but you and your man can't live together. These games they play with the family unit, the black family unit, you know what I'm saying? And then it's like you put them in the project and you run a project on them. You understand? So we ain't been understanding what we were going through as a people. We starting to see the repercussion. Like I said, the man give a diagnosis of what we went through. You know what I'm saying? And I give thanks for that because it gave me a better understanding of how we get conditioned as a people, because we've been conditioned. You know, and the things with the politicians today, you know, they'll tell you they're Americans. You know what I'm saying? And
They're not just Americans, we're Democrats.
They proud of that. They have a pride in that. You understand? They have a pride about that. And don't get me wrong, I'm not so ignorant to say that being under the US flag ain't got no benefits. Because it does. They have a lot of economic benefits in terms of being under the US flag. If the people here was able to utilize that for the development of this place and the education for the children and prioritize that, this society could be very far ahead. But human nature being imperfect and and a system that, in my opinion, encourage thieving. You check, because enough of the politicians them wrong here is corruption. Them man go into the system and they find ways to make money and do things, and it's like you start down that way, it's like this again, you start to see money easy. How else you going? If you are working for $1,000 a week and you are busting your tail for $1,000 a week, and then a man tell you what you gotta do this and you go see 10 tower a week. And you start to see 10 tower a week for a year, you think you could go back to $1,000 a week?
Right.
You don't get conditioned to make money a certain way.
Right.
You check? And these are the things that are going on in the system. You understand? It's these kind of things that are going on in the system. You know?
That's you're right. Because we have to come to the realization, that we have always been mentally enslaved from the time we became conditioned, where we were no longer thinking about running away from the plantation, because it came to that point, right? We fought back while we were on the plantation. We asked for freedom, but then the very next day, the day we think we win, we get murdered, and then we ended up going right back on the plantation to work. Or instead of working for free, we work for 5 cents a day, which in turn them and turn around and take 5 cents a day from you. And that's the conditioning. And the thing about it is, like, we never really evolved the capacity to overstand. I don't know why it was. I mean, we evolved the understanding, but we never evolved the capacity to understand that only way out of this is together and to safeguard each other. You understand? Because if you go back and you read the things that David Hamilton Jackson and the fact that he get derailed, this man was really developing the population, the people for independence, true freedom.
Economic independence, for sure.
Buying the land, you understand,
Land.
setting up the midwifery, and this man did what government was supposed to do. And that's why I always come back to talk. He erected what I call parallel structures right amidst the government. He erected a structure that was doing what the government should have been doing.
Even we give the word government, we give the word government unto like it's alien to the people, which in the people is the government. So when we say government, we make it they only supposed to represent us in a certain capacity. You know what I mean? 'Cause we elect them, we put them in there. But we seem like they come like the landlord, like they over we know. But
Right.
we have the thing kind of backwards. We holding them accountable. Even Mario to speak about accountability. The Senate is not accountable to no precinct, no jurisdiction. They just write laws, bills. You know, they really account. You cannot hold none of them 15 senators accountable for nothing. What says the government? They gonna come and do the tenure. You vote them in, you vote them out. They get the check. You know what I mean? They make things that benefit them and they loved ones, and that's how it is down here.
So my question is, when will that stop? Because we still seeing it today, and talking about it no more than ever. Like amongst the time I growing up as youth, he had a serious set of brothers wrong there that had a certain level of consciousness. But look, from then to now, I man is 53 years old. You check from then to now, we still, in fact, I think we was with more conscious people. You understand what I'm saying? So when will this thing end? When will we come to that point to say enough? Like, you know what I mean? Because even and I'm stepping outside of the realm of those people call themselves conscious, because I think we have a quote unquote population of people that would consider themselves educated.
I think we answer how we know what we have to do is if we're willing to do it. You know, we can identify all the problems. We know all the problems. Is if we're willing to sacrifice what needs to be sacrificed to get it done. The land, you know, we could purchase land. I mean, we could set up our own industries. You know what I mean? We have the knowledge for self-governance. We have professionals in different fields that we could do for self, but a lot of we just become complacent. We complain, but we really and truly is like
I don't
comfortable. You know what I mean?
I don't know if one's confident that it could happen, you know. I think like there's a lot of ones that ain't confident that ones could do that. And for different reasons. For me, just keeping it 100, you know, I know that anytime black people start to talk solidarity, it'll make white people uncomfortable. You know, and to the point where, you know, they want to infiltrate and even disassemble. We've seen that time and time again, you know what I'm saying? Anytime you see any black solidarity and movement, you know, the white establishment become threatened by that, you know, and that is a history of us as a people assimilating, and that scares some people too, because it's like, hey, you know, are you willing to give up your life for what you believe in? You know, so these are some of the things that as a people that we face that ones don't even talk about freely. A lot of ones don't talk about these things freely because these things exist. You understand? There's a reason why this place full of tabletop land and ain't got no agriculture going on. Like that's the easiest. You just have to do the trellis. You know, when you farming on a hillside, you got to go out to kind of thing to farm on a hillside. Man, here ain't got them problem. You got tabletop to just run for miles. How come we ain't got no farm? Because that will lead to a farmer independence. No, the thing is, even though man could think it, no, The youths them so caught up.
You can't even get them to do
They
nothing.
want to eat McDonald's and cheeseburger like the man said. Like you gotta convince the youth them. You gotta get wise and realize the destructive nature of your lifestyle. You know, like culture got tuned. You could eat enough pork till you make your teeth cut your throat. You check? Meaning like your teeth become a blade to your neck.
Right.
You love eat garbage and junk. You know what I'm saying? So you have to come to realize, hey, the way I live in, they're talking about it now with the slugs in dung and all of this, yeah. But man have to realize these things for them to realize, okay, if you really deal with self-preservation, you're gonna stop eat certain things, you're gonna stop do certain things, you're gonna stop. It is a whole education of self that have to manifest.
Well, how do you educate the people that are so far gone, right? Because they are aware to some degree, but awareness and actual consciousness, I don't want to say it like that. They are aware, you know, but again, they don't have the will. They don't have the will because they've been so conditioned to break the conditioning. They don't possess the will. And as you talk about the youth them now, how do you get young people who, I would say, for most of their adult life, or for most of their life, they've been pacified by TV? Because you got generation, anybody under 50 grew up on some TV. I'm in my 50s and I watch my share of TV. You understand? I watch my share of TV. So anybody 50 and under within the mid 50s, I won't even go as far as late 50s, grew up under that box.
Programming.
You check what I'm saying? So there's an erosion of a certain sense of self and self-pride and to do anything. Now you ask the regular youth out there, what you want to do? You understand? And he will tell you, I don't know. You ask a youth man out there, what you interested in doing? What you like doing? And they'll tell you, I don't know.
Because a lot of opportunities been stripped, so they're being exposed too much. They just know that most of the youth come up with a mindset that they ain't trying to work hard like mommy and daddy. They're looking at a different way. You know, the TV will show them a different lifestyle. So this is what they aspiring to live. They ain't want to go and work like mommy and daddy for 8 hours to come tired and just want to sleep and then repeat the process for 40 more years. They're saying, no, we ain't going through that. We're going to find the next way. You know what I mean? So the hard labor thing, you got to. It's a tough situation.
No, I was listening to the radio the other day and I'm all reasoning with it, and I was saying, you know, I hear the radio personality saying that, you know, if you're looking for a job, don't study the pay, just come and work. And I said, that's just not being realistic.
Of course not.
You know what I'm saying? That's just not being realistic. Like,
don't watch the pay.
like, you know, and he was saying, like, especially if you're going into a job where you don't have the skill. Like, say you go out someplace and a man tell, well, I could train you how to tile, or I could train you how to whatever. He's saying just be grateful to take up and learn and get what you get. Now, I understand from that perspective, right? But you can't tell somebody who get responsibility that. You could tell somebody who ain't got no rent, or somebody who ain't got no children, somebody who ain't, you know what I'm saying, ain't got no bills knocking on them. You know what I'm saying? You could tell that to somebody still live with their parents. But for a man with a family, or a man who have a youth, a man who want to have a care, have care payments, or have house, you want to live a place where your woman, you can't tell a grown man don't study. Hey, you know, that's just not being realistic. So a lot of the youth them to choose, like the rest are saying, an easier way for the quick money. You know what I'm saying? Dope dealing, because yeah, I mean you get involved in that, you could see your way quick. Right? And a lot of men come up that way. But like I was saying with the cat, a lot of them are fall away too, because instead of having the intelligence. You know what I'm saying? I'm not endorsing no drug dealing, but I'm just being realistic, right? I'm being realistic.
To move from that point.
Right. That man, you make money, you do that, and you see a good 90,000 or 100,000, 70,000 in how much time you do that, whatever. Are you conscious enough to go and do something where you could invest and put yourself on a path where you can generate money legit and pay taxes and pay into the system? A lot of the youth man them ain't got a knowledge. So once they start to make that money that way, that money, no other way of making money gonna suffice. You know what I'm saying? Like, you're accustomed to seeing it this fast, and to come and punch a clock right now, you got to be kidding. You know what I'm saying? That man ain't done for that. So it's these kind of things, you know. And how do you wake up a people, to answer your question, bro? I'm gonna keep it real again. They got a lot of people that gonna just perish straight up. They're gonna pass away, they're gonna decline, you know what I'm saying? And they're gonna have to have a generation that rise with intelligence and the intellect to see the pitfalls.
Not even rise, brought up. Cause you know, it ain't gonna just be rise on their own, because it's gonna require intention. Because this thing, what we've been in, we talking what? Something over about what? 30, 40 generations about slavery. So no. It took that much. So that's an inbred now concept. You know what I'm saying? The whole idea of how you gonna behave yourself. If you watch black people all across Americas now, the Americas right now, you just see like what you call inappropriate behavior. Just totally inappropriate. You know what I mean? And they're gonna have to take a part of those people actually coming together to like say, listen, man, intention, we're gonna have to run this thing. Like, yeah, we're gonna have to start with a school system, similar to what the Hamilton Jackson did. A school system, a healthcare system, right? Because you already have people in the community done doing these things already. Just now patronizing these things. You know what I'm saying? And then making a conscious effort to just raise up your children then. Because if you ain't raise up with that consciousness right now, the time we're living in, it's gonna take something really, really drastic to hit you over your head for you to even find it.
And let me add to this, right? So as far as the intention part, it's like parents right now, especially if you have young children, even though it might seem to be a challenge, because I did it with my youth, right? It's intentional. Was that okay? At between this hour, there's no TV. It's reading time. Get a book, any book. If you got like to write a story or read a book, do that. So you, the parent out there, the grandmother, whoever, you know, you could be intentional. Do it in that regards. And even like, you know, show your children how to plant something in a pot, you know, because eventually when they see that seed pop into a plant and produce a pepper or a tomato, they'll be so like, wow, this is what I did and this what came out of it. It may seem like small, but it's big, because then that will be ingrained in the mind of the youth. When they get older, they're gonna want to, okay, I remember when mommy or daddy or grandma showed me how to plant. Because when hard time come, at least you know what to do. And this is the time that we supposed to really, I mean, hey, if you ain't doing it now, hard time apparently is coming, as they say, with food shortage or what have you coming down, that you best start right now. Seriously. Start right now. Mm-hmm.
Yes, well, I think we did.
No, you're not.
Yeah.
Organizing in the whole process is important for people to develop the initiatives to, you have to have initiatives and organize it from every aspect of our lives, you know. It have to be like a ritual, a tradition for we to get up every morning with the intention to develop our minds and our hearts and organize what we're doing, because there's only a few who have to lead the many. You don't expect, you expect no whole heap of- Some people, they don't have that passion or desire to do for self. They waiting and hand up. Some people, that's all they know. So the few who know about responsibility and leadership is who will be afforded that responsibility, who will have to take on that, you know what I mean, to move the masses, because the masses, means a generation of people are just, we call them vipers. They don't really have that consciousness. You know what I mean? Like D. Hamilton Jackson and Marcus Garvey and other leaders before, they kill them people, they call them martyrs. So most of the people don't even aspire to be them kind of people, because they see what happened to those kind of people.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? So to put their life on the line like that is like, yo, you know what I mean? They ain't willing to do that. So those who willing to do that, they really have to be strategic and disciplined and understand what they are up against. You know what I mean? You can't move like just careless, you know what I mean? At the time, targeting these people because they are a threat to the status quo. Right? So, you know what I mean? We gotta be more courageous and greater in outlook, you know what I mean? And how you see that yourself. You know what I mean? The ancestors have their own guidance, you know what I mean? And protection. But we gotta implement, yeah, organize everything we do, you know what I mean? Moving forward.
Last words.
Well, I would say as we look upon where we at right now in this dispensation, we gotta learn from what happened, from what we read, and we have to take personal responsibility for our future and connect with other ones, right? Frankly, I don't think we'll ever see a mass of black people coming together. I think you'll see pockets. You know what I'm saying? Because the way how this system don't have so many, caught up in it, is that what they have the term, and I just said it earlier, just not too long ago. In every skinful is a kinful, and that's the reality of the situation.
Come on, give thanks for the reason, man. That's so far away. Yeah, that's what I gotta say.
My last thought is about the mindset, because as you said, we said every king foot,
Every skinful
skin
foot
is
in
not
a kinful.
okay. So it boils down to your mentality, all right? Your mentality, and that's where if we as people, okay, as people, with what's being done to mankind, right now,
Hmm.
is a mentality is really what is the key,
Yes, sir.
is the key to wake up what needs to be woken up and do what must get done. Our history is definitely important for us, and anyone who denies a people their history, they're just evil. I call it like that. You're just evil. Them from K to 12, even to college, and it's like it's not being done in the curriculum. Wake up, people.
And I know why people doing that.
It's a mixture. It's a mixture of people. That's why I say it's evil, because it ain't matter what color you be, it's your mind and what's in your heart that will be revealed.
Marcus Garvey, Carolyn Coconut. The apple said, I'm waiting inside.
Dry coconut.
Yes, I. Well, just want to say thank everyone here and everyone who viewed and will be viewing for listening to the reading and the reasoning of the Crucian Dialogues written by Mara C. Moorhead. And again, you can get your copy on Amazon. It's electronically or hard copy on St. Croix. Contact 340-277-7485. 5. And some announcements while before closing off. Today's what? Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. What's going on Friday? Saturday, we are having Unity in the Courtyard here at Leaders Courtyard, where ITIL Trinity and Nubian Son and UCU's new office is located. Admission, come down at 7 p.m. There'll be music, there'll be food, there'll be drinks. Your support will go a long way to help the remaining of our Kwanzaa Everyday initiatives. So that's exciting. Let me see what else. Oh, the 31st, Sunday, October 31st, we're having African Wealth Builders Network and Kwanzaa Everyday Global Meeting. That's 12 p.m. That will be on our Facebook page, Kwanzaa Everyday Group page. And you can contact us at 1-857-240-2854. What else? Kemetic Yoga with Darshani at the beach. That's Sundays at 9:00 a.m. So contact her for further information, darshania.info@gmail.com. You see, Saturday online program is on Saturdays, that is, yes, 4 p.m. to 5 p.m. and focusing on the principle of Kuumba, which means creativity. So if you're a creative person, the time to join in so that you could share what your gifts are is at 4:30. So tune in. That will be on UCU's Facebook page, Umoja Caribbean Union Inc. Other things going on that needs to be mentioned. Yeah? Let me see. Serenity's Nest, 7:00 p.m. Oh,
Sunday.
before that, sorry. The Sacred Council of Elders is having the last Sunday of the month. Yes, Healing Heart Gathering at the Frederickside Community Garden at 5:30 p.m. And then, yes, Serenity. There's reggae. There's a reggae show.
Yes, on the 31st, I think.
Yes,
That's
also on the
with
31st.
VI Fire.
Yes, VI Fire, and thank you. Let me acknowledge Malachi for initiating the, and you could announce it too, right? Initiating reggae at sunset that took place at Dorsch Center, and VI Fire Band provided the band, and Akibula Empress Sounds.
Yeah, is it Akibla Empress or Empress Akibla?
Akibilan Empress.
Empress
Akibla
Sounds.
Empress.
Yes, CC Flavor, Empress I for doing DJing, and all the performers. Empress Ma'at for here, Empress Earth, Excalibur, Akin,
Yes, sir.
Yes I, and we had a star, Siegel's daughter. Oh my gosh, right?
I think so, I'm not sure.
Peterson, but check out Umoja Caribbean Union Facebook page so that you can see the recording. Yeah, and then since I guess it will be announced on Saturday, more things will be announced on Saturday's program, so just tune in to that. All right. Thank you again, everyone. And remember, whatever you do, be the best version of you because you are needed, especially in this time.
Yes, sir.
All right.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What does it say? 30 days?
Which one? This
Wait.
one here?
That's the blue.
You only want it for 30 days?
What does it say?
It's a privacy, personal,
Post now. Okay.
and this one.